The Blair Witch Project, a movie released in the year 1999, which everybody at the time raved about when it was released, due to the fact that everybody thought that the filmings in the movie were actually real. Whilst this isn't actually the case, as I'm sure that you're probably aware, there is actually a lot more truth behind the filming of this movie than you might expect. Certain things that they kept hidden from not only the people watching the movie, but the cast themselves, which makes this all a little bit more creepy. So, today we're going to explore this very spoopy episode of Brainspill and find out why the Blair Witch Project was a lot more terrifying than you might think. Hello! Welcome to Brainspill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and I'm just going to say it, if you can make a movie on a peanut budget and make millions of dollars out of it, you're doing something right. For those of you that may not know, the Blair Witch Project was a movie released on the premise that this was lost footage found from a handheld camera that has since been found, almost like Paranormal Activity or Cloverfield. I know some people don't like this kind of movie as it seems kinda cheap and shaky, but that's the whole point. It's meant to be found footage. It's realistic due to the fact that in certain scenes, people are running for their lives rather than trying to get a good camera angle. So, whilst I don't mind this sort of thing, I can understand where the criticism comes from. The plot of the movie is that three young filmmakers set out to make a documentary about the Blair Witch, a mythical figure responsible for many disappearances and a string of deaths in the local town of Buckettsville, Maryland. They decide to venture into the woods because, horror stereotypes, and one by one they get brutalised and picked off, as you might expect. And yes, the entire time this movie's being shot, it is through the perspective of the filmmakers and their cameras making this documentary. And, spoilers and all, this film is 20 years old by now. They all go missing, and they've been missing ever since. Ooh, spooky. So, you might be wondering why people actually believe this was real, and why this all added to such a hype when the movie was first released. However, it might actually have something to do with the genius marketing that the filmmakers did before the movie was released. A fake website was created by director Eduardo Sanchez prior to the movie's release. The campaign transformed the Blair Witch into an urban myth. This website also purported that the actors themselves had genuinely gone missing. Online viral marketing campaigns were finding their feet, and this was certainly one way to do that. This helped cement the idea that this was genuinely a story of three missing teens. However, to achieve such realism, the making of the movie was also taken to its limits to try and create a compelling and realistic witch hunt. Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez directed, wrote, and edited the movie, but some interesting choices were made when deciding to make this movie all the way up to the point where they pitched this to investors. In that, they tried to convince the investors that this also was a real movie. We showed investors this video. It was basically like a little 8-minute documentary about what we were going to do about the disappearance of these kids. We really played it off as real. We had fake newspaper articles, news footage, crazy stuff like that. They immediately would be shocked and say, well, where are these tapes? You actually have these tapes? We would say, well, we could have these tapes, if you gave us a little money. Yes, it was one thing to construct an urban legend for the promotion of the movie, but it's another thing to be that dedicated to the idea that you did it even before you had funding for the movie, claiming that this was all real and even convincing your own investors to invest in your project. Pretty slick stuff. The same thought even went into the idea of when they were trying to find cast for the movie, and by cast I mean the three teenagers because there's pretty much no one else in the movie. But effectively they had a whole host of different fake news articles, interviews, news snippets, all this cool stuff to try and build a world showing that these children had genuinely gone missing. The real challenge, however, came to the actual filmmaking process, where they had their cast of 3 amateur filmmakers and then basically just sent them out into the woods, with the cameras to film themselves and create footage for the movie. Directing of these kids was a pretty hands-off approach, all things considered. And yes, one of the big criticisms of this movie is that this is basically a video of 3 kids wandering around the woods, and if that's what you thought, then I don't blame you, because that is pretty much what most of the movie actually is, and it was intended that way. given the fact that these filmmakers were actually just given the cameras and then basically being told to film themselves in the forest. So what else do you film? Walking around in the forest, I guess. It wasn't like these guys were given a film crew or a set or anywhere to stay. They were by themselves. There was no one else there. Well, no one else in sight anyway. Yes, no director, no supporting cast or crew, nothing apart from these 3 actors in the woods by themselves with cameras. They were pretty much left to their own devices to create the footage for the movie. The only directions they received were notes left at various checkpoints, along with batteries for the cameras and a dwindling amount of food. So the filmmaking process would be the actors walking all day to the new checkpoints. They basically set up camp, and then basically the film crew would track them down, find where they were camping, and then decide to terrorize them throughout the night, creating the very scary scenes that you see in the movie. The reactions of the crew, obviously knowing that this wasn't a real Blair Witch demon in the woods, in some respects gave genuine fear and horror. Look, if it's 4 AM and I know that I'm filming a movie and someone decides to come and boot my tent down, I'm going to be pretty pissed off, regardless of whether it's a demon or Frank the director. Either way, I'm not going to be a happy bunny. This form of method acting went on for some time, with the kids being in the woods for 7 days total, by themselves, basically picking up rations and food as they go. And this had a bit of an impact on them, not only due to the fact that they were completely isolated, but also due to the fact that the food rationing they would be given would be very slowly weaned down, meaning that the crew would become hungry, tired and stressed over the days, not knowing where they are or what to do. This trick in filmmaking made this whole ordeal quite traumatic for the actors involved. Despite knowing that they were doing this all for a movie, if they put the actors through a grueling few days of hell, this would translate onto the screen very, very well. This was achieved by keeping them up at night, harassing the actors and making them more and more tired out. The directors always said that they didn't jeopardize their health, but the actors themselves don't look back on the filming of this movie with any particular delight. So yeah, that was the process. They would basically just lead them from one point to another, get them incredibly tired and hungry, scare them in the night, and then basically make their life a living hell. So yes, a large proportion of this movie is improv acting or just taking the environment around the actors. There is a very small part of it which is scripted due to the fact that the director would give the characters some general idea of what was going to happen on the day or certain things that need to happen, such as this person's going to potentially disappear, you need to react in this way if someone says this thing to you, but that's genuinely it. A few pointers of the direction that the director wants to take the movie, and then let's leave them to it. Sounds like a pretty good idea. And like I said, it was made on a shoestring budget, so this simple concept was very, very profitable. So profitable, in fact, that the movie made $250 million on the box office release, which is pretty good going. This was so successful, in fact, that this was considered one of the most successful independent movies of all time, based on the fact that the movie only cost about $60,000 to produce. There was an increased cost after this due to some post-production edits that needed to be made, but that pales in comparison to the gross profits that this movie made in the end. So, my advice to you, you young budding filmmaker, is that if you want to make a successful movie, make a lost footage movie, make it through a few bucks, and then basically sell it for $250 million. Seems pretty simple. If you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit the bell button. And if you've got any ideas for what topics you'd like me to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. Do you know what? I liked the movie. I think it was pretty good. I thought it was original, creative, and anybody that tries to do it now will just be trying to make a fake imitation. So, on that basis, I too will try and make my own imitation version of the movie, where basically I'll do it from a modern perspective. I'll pull out my incredibly powerful camera phone, point it into the woods, and then see that Blair Witch demon in HD quality. I mean, it kind of does take the sting out of the whole scary aspect of the movie, but at least it's accurate. And at least everybody bloody sees what it looks like, because I still don't even think we know what this thing is meant to look like, but you tell me. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.